Happy Monday, everybody. Yeah, I know. I feel that way too. You know, if I were sitting where you were, I'd be just as excited. What a great weekend, huh? Once again, we all got to visit the strangest place in the universe. You know, that place where people actually think Bill Nye's a scientist, Pete Davidson's a sex symbol, and joy is a place called Behar. Talking about America's mainstream media, a world run by conjurers who believe they can hypnotize us into not believing what we see. You know, we've been here before. Remember this gem from back in 2020. To the sane among us, it looked like a bunch of thugs setting fire to a city, while Democrat mayors hid behind the toppled statues. But to the media, it looked like a friendly game of spin the bottle. A bottle filled with gas, later to be lit and tossed into a business. Remember when the media called summer 2020 the summer of love? Maybe so, if you're dating the Zodiac killer. Don't knock it. It was a hell of a kisser. But now, they're back. That adorable bunch of miscreants known as the Mostly Peaceful.
CNN presents It's Mostly Peaceful, featuring Molotov cocktails, public beatings, burning buildings, looting and shooting. But no worries, it's mostly peaceful. People die, people lose their businesses, cities suffer millions in damages. It's CNN's Mostly Peaceful. Tonight's episode, Antifa goes to Atlanta.
Yeah. Down in Atlanta, the city had begun building a police training facility. You know, the place that offers the better training for law enforcement that the left's always been demanding, where cops can learn to defend themselves from a 6'5", 280-pound career criminal trying to stab them to death by reading a poem to him from Maya Angelou. Of course, the true face of defund emerged right on cue. The anti-cop rabble descended on the site to occupy it. And last week, the police attempted to clear them out so construction could continue. And of course, rioting broke out, or what CNN calls a harmless pillow fight. 7 people arrested on charges of domestic terror. A cop was shot. When police returned fire, the shooter, a non-binary protester, was killed, even before police asked for pronouns. I wonder, does reporting that the casualty was non-binary cause twice as much outrage? Because, of course, mass outrage was the response. After Antifa thugs put out a call online for a night of rage, on Saturday, a horde descended on downtown Atlanta, throwing rocks and Molotovs at police, smashing windows, and lighting police cars on fire. Tourists tried to find flights to a safer destination, but Ukraine was closed for the night. Now, after the mayor held a presser saying the city wouldn't tolerate this violence, here's what CNN had to say.
I think that there's a real blurring of the lines in the use of the word violence. Is property destruction violence? To some people, it certainly is. You keep using these words, violent, 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 violent. The only acts of violence against people that I saw were actually police tackling protesters.
Can we stop with the violent word? I mean, the violence is okay, but stop using the word. So it was a peaceful night of rage, which I guess is just like a wacky outbreak of monkeypox. But it's good to see CNN no longer traffics in radical left-wing ideology anymore. What that was. So CNN calls this nonviolent just as they're closing their historic Atlantic location. They're moving. Something doesn't jibe. Generally, you don't flee a city in a U-Haul if you actually believe it's safe. But it just shows that despite all the bloodshed that came from their enabling coverage for years, CNN has still learned nothing. They keep making the same mistake over and over again, like when I give too much money to charity. But CNN isn't the only one. Here's ABC News' take. If you can read that, there's that same phrase again. It's just a peaceful protest that happened to turn violent. You know, it happened to turn violent. See, it's out of their hands. How did this happen? It's like a tiger cub that goes crazy on a talk show and eats Brian Kilmeade's face. You have that dream too, don't you? And so our cities are turning into hellholes, and we're not supposed to notice. It's like when Brit Hume steals office supplies, we're told to look the other way. He can't help it, they say. Atlanta, Philadelphia, SF. Here in New York, where DA Alvin Bragg claims his reforms will stop skyrocketing subway crime, our own Fox News weatherman Adam Klotz was just jumped on the subway by a gang after he tried to defend an older man being harassed by the group. They beat him like he got the forecast wrong on the day they were supposed to go looting. Lucky for him, he clots. I know. Cops caught 3 of them, all teens. No criminal charges were filed, and they were released to their parents. With criminal justice like that, it's safer to ride the subway on the outside. But urban decay isn't new. From the 60s to the 90s, our cities looked like they'd been sacked by cranky Visigoths. People fled in droves. The only institution left that actually functioned was the mafia. It's happening again, though. But this is different because we're told there's nothing to see here. It's not happening. Just like the border, just like the documents, just like the elections. So where do the sane among us go then? So how about Mexico? They never finished that wall, right? They're all coming here, so let's just switch countries, right? We get tequila, they get Don Lemon. Let's welcome tonight's guest. He's so well dressed, his pocket square has a pocket square. Host of Making Money on Fox Business, Charles Page. This correspondent survived the most dangerous war zone of all, the Real Housewives of Orange County. Author of the new book, Chasing Catastrophe, Rick Sexy Leventhal. And she's always there in a clutch because she sleeps in a car. Fox News contributor, Kat Tim. And he's like a life alert button. He provides excellent protection, and old women want to put him in their showers. My massive sidekick in the NWA World Heavyweight Championship. It's funny because it's true.
Yeah. I did write that one.
Yeah. That was a good one. All right, Charles. When these people are talking about how it's not violent, they're obviously not factoring in what happens to these small businesses or the small business owners, the minority owners and stuff like that. How did they not learn? How did they not learn from the last 3 years?
Well, first of all, that dude we heard, I get a feeling he's never been on the train.
Yeah.
Certainly not a New York City train. And he's never probably been jumped. I mean, it's so, I don't even get, like, who are they talking to? Even their own echo chamber has to be getting smaller and smaller because it's just so nonsensical. I mean, but the news itself, the mainstream media has just gone so far off kilter. It's really nuts. I mean, it's obviously when something is burning up, okay? When someone throws a Molotov cocktail, when someone goes to the hospital, what bothers me, though, is that these anarchists get to go from city to city and spark these things and get cover from the mainstream media. That is really a shame.
Yeah, it's true. It's like they built them up because they're anti-fascist, but all they are very miserable and quite unattractive Caucasians. They're not very, they're very ugly people. And they keep switching genders
a lot of them feel like
they can't get laid.
A lot of them feel like they were in drug therapy, like they were on some sort of drug and.
I'm with you on that one.
Yeah.
I think they're like a step away from mass killing type people because they're like there's a narco issue, there's a family issue, they're the opposite of Rick Leventhal. Oh, look at that, huh?
Yeah.
You brought some fans with you. Huh?
I might have brought 1 or 2, yeah.
Yeah. Rick, it's great to see you. You used to do Red Eye back in the days of Fox. You haven't aged a bit.
Thank you. I'm getting younger, actually.
I think you are.
Yeah.
You have this great book out, Chasing Catastrophe. It's about your life covering wars and hurricanes and many other things that can't be mentioned. The problem with your book, though, Rick, is there's no index.
Yeah, well, you're not in it, Greg, so you can stop looking for your name. I mean, sorry.
That's the whole point. So, when you're looking at this, a lot of people when they leave cable news, they leave and they don't look back. Which I think you might have done. But what do you make of this when they were still are calling violent protests peaceful?
Well, I think it's awful. I've seen this repeat itself over and over again. And actually, before I left Fox, I would report on this every night on the nonviolent, violent protests.
Yes.
But I didn't call them nonviolent protests because they were violent. And that obviously is violence. And for them to try to perpetuate this ridiculous position that, oh, well, no one's getting hurt, or it's just property damage, it's not real violence. It's ridiculous. And the other piece of it is that they're enabling the behavior by not prosecuting the people who are responsible for it, so it feeds on itself. If you know you're going to get away with it, you're going to do it again tomorrow. And we've seen that time and time again. You can't let people break the law and go free, or they're going to keep breaking the law and they're going to escalate.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well put.
Thanks.
Kat, I hope you were listening. I hope you learned something from him. Let's talk about our very own poor Adam Klotz.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was Kilmeade, I wouldn't care. Ducey, yeah, you know, he's been around a while. But a poor young Adam Klotz, weatherman, probably can't fight.
Yeah. No, it's okay. Did you see his tweet?
What?
He tweeted and he said, while the headline I just read, viciously beaten by teens, is true, it's doing way more damage to my ego than the physical beating did.
But I mean, he
has like a sense of humor about this horrible thing that happened.
He is living the thing that every guy, I would say every guy has in the subway, whether they have to make a choice to intervene or not. And like, if you're like a person, if you're there and you're going like, okay, I could die, or I could live the rest of my life thinking I didn't do something. You see, let's say a woman's getting slapped around by a dude and you don't step in, but then that guy just stabs you. You're dead. But if you didn't get stabbed and you're not dead, you're gonna go like, wow, I'm a wuss.
Yeah.
So I give him kudos for going up, but who never go to a group of teens? They're like rabid finches.
Oh, yeah, well, that's why I think it's so interesting, this comment of, destroying property isn't violence, and then taking it further and saying destroying property is not the same as violence against a human. It's like, is anybody saying that it is?
Yeah.
I don't think, and of course the interview doesn't ask that. Like, who are these people who are saying that it's the same? Because they don't exist.
Right.
But I think it's actually that same side that is, diminishing humanity and human life and safety, because they don't care when stuff like that happens, which I think we should all be able to agree on is bad.
It is bad. It is bad. What did you make of the Adam Klotz?
Okay, well, I think what you're trying to say is that a coward dies 1,000 deaths.
You know what?
A soldier dies.
I came up with that.
Yes, I think that's where you were.
I came up with that.
In a really bad way, that's what you were trying to say. Take it from a guy who's been in a fight, who's been outnumbered in most of the fights I've been in. You don't announce it. That would be my advice to him. In the future, swing first, make an example of the first one, so the other ones go, oh, but when you say, hey, take your hands off that guy. Yeah. That's the wrong side of white privilege. That's the mistake.
Okay,
if for nothing else, don't investigate and don't announce. Okay? Because then they see that's the movies with him. Yeah. And then they turned around and they were expecting a showdown. They were like, get him, and he was like, whoa. He thought he was gonna have some dialogue. No, you gotta.
If he walked over and punched one of the 15-year-olds, the headline would be Fox Weatherman Storm Front.
Yes.
Angry front.
Yeah. Saved old man from group of teens. No, you know what? But good for him. He did the right thing, and I'm glad that he's able to talk about it.
Yeah.
So he
did do the right thing, but he paid a heavy price for it.
Yeah. And that's when since I brought up the white thing, that's when white people interfering is a good thing. Now you go down to Atlanta where these privileged trust funds come in to black neighborhoods and burn the place down, and then they leave.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the neighborhoods are destroyed. And I don't understand how a Don Lemon or someone can't be going, these racist people using plight to hurt black communities, because that's who they're hurting.
That's a fantastic
That's where
point.
they're destroying our neighborhoods for no other reason than for just to do it.
Yeah.
There's no such thing that's like saying mostly alive. You're either breathing or you're not.
Yeah.
It's either peaceful or it's violent.
Or
and
pregnant.
these are violent. And who gets hurt when a building burns down? Everybody in that neighborhood. Jobs, other business. Why would they come in? Atlanta used to be a booming city. It was growing. Now it's not because of stuff like this. Mayor, Arrest these. Don't let those 6 go. Hit them with everything you can to send some kind of message. Yeah, you're not going to get invited to the Grammys and all other kind of stuff, but your neighborhoods will be safer.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.